It is the B.Block Podcast. I am your host, Brandon Scott. I appreciate you for being here. I want to talk about what's going on with Texas right now. Look, I could not help but to have to weigh in on this because I was not expecting. I'm gonna be honest about this, man. I was not actually expecting for Texas to beat Texas A&M. I had A&M winning that game, and so because of that, I did not anticipate the conversation that would happen once Texas won. I'm not gonna say I hadn't even considered the possibility that they would win or that they could win, but I certainly did not have them winning the game, and so that threw me for a loop a little bit. I'm gonna talk about that. I also want to touch on this Lane Kiffin thing, and by the time this episode actually comes out, it is very much possible that Lane Kiffin has already made a decision. And not only has he already made a decision, but that decision has been announced, shared with the public, and reported, and you'll have people reacting to that as well. I can tell you just on the front end that I don't really care as much about where Lane Kiffin ends up, but there is a part of this Lane Kiffin story that I cannot help but to tackle. And of course, I don't think we've been on since CJ Stroud was officially cleared of concussion protocol. I think I was on the air. Yeah, I was on the air at the time. So I went to practice on Friday and actually saw CJ Stroud at Texans practice. They didn't really do anything. I saw everybody there, and they weren't really doing much of anything. It was just a walkthrough, as you might expect on a Friday, but was not surprised and was very much expecting CJ Stroud to clear concussion protocol and to find out that he would play. I got to react to that quite a bit on the radio, on Sports Radio 610. I was with Clint Sterner at the time. Had a good time. Also, shout out to the people that showed up to BB's. I don't know if any of those people actually are listening to the podcast. I hope they are. But we had a nice, or a decent at least, crowd at BB's Tex Orleans out in Pearland, and we got a chance to chop it up about this game. And so I'll do that a little bit, at least in terms of reacting to CJ Stroud and his return to the Texans in this game that they got against the Colts and sort of the expectations and maybe even some of the concerns going in. But what brought me here, what brought me to you today is just the fact. So I don't know how much, because I haven't done at least a whole lot of college football on the podcast up until this point. And hopefully that changes, as we do the podcast more. Hopefully that's something that changes, and I expect that it will. But if you're not familiar, if you're new to the program, you're not really familiar with me, I have been, so my introduction to college football is as a Texas fan, right? As a child who rooted for Texas in the 90s, okay? My introduction to college football would have been sometime between the 1997 and 1998 season. I can remember hearing about this guy, Ricky Williams, this running back for Texas that was just dynamic, and people were talking about him. But I was probably like 8 years old. I wasn't really into it yet. In that 1997 season when Ricky Williams really sort of took off. That 1998 season where he wins the Heisman. By that point, we've all heard of him. And I'm at least curious as a 9-year-old. And I've basically been riding with Texas ever since. First quarterback controversy that I ever cared about, of course, was the Major Applewhite Chris Sims situation. Once Vince Young went there in the early 2000s, of course, 2000, 2005, 2006. Like once that kind of takes off, I'm from the same neighborhood. You heard the song coming in, the intro, B.Scott from Hiram Clark. If you don't know, Vince Young also of that area. So I didn't go to Texas, but I can tell you that I rooted for Texas long before I had ever considered what college even was, much less that I would go. Okay. So just putting that out there as like the disclaimer of where I'm coming from at this. Like I'm a Texas fan. My connection to college football has always been through the University of Texas. So that being said, I would have loved to, despite having not picked the team that I root for, despite having not talked no shit with my Aggie friends. Okay. And I got friends that are just like me that are what you might call a t-shirt Aggie fan. And I got even more that actually went to Texas A&M. Okay. Especially going to Sam Houston State right up the street. Spent a lot more time in College Station at A&M than I ever did at Texas as a college kid. I'll say that. So like I didn't get to really do that this year and talking doors with my Aggie friends and kind of like feeling that bravado of the big brother that Texas fancies itself on being. I didn't really get to do that this year because Texas was on some bullshit for, I would say, the better part of the season. Okay. Like even if you want to give them the credit for playing tough against Ohio State, by the time by the time they lose that game to Florida, they've already had the Arch Manning conversation, where it took Arch a while to kind of really catch on. They've already had the conversation about the offensive line, trying to replace it, not being as good as, as you would hope for, and them struggling with that. Steve Sarkisian himself, some of the play calling, like it was already kind of a disappointment leading up to losing to Florida. Okay. So by the time you get all the way down to this game, okay, this final game, A&M's had a really good season, undefeated up until that point. Their defense, everything that I thought and people said that Texas's would be. Quarterback, I think for the totality of the season, outplayed Texas's quarterback. Hard for me to really confidently talk my shit and feel like, hey, y'all gonna win this game, despite the fact that I know that they're super talented and capable of winning the game. So once they actually did win the game, and I think by the time you get to late in the game, it's pretty clear that they were going to win this game, that they were the better football team, especially on this day, particularly on this day, I would say. Like, I would love to just be able to celebrate, okay, just as a Texas fan, I'd really like to, at this point, be able to just celebrate the fact that Texas at least beat their rivals. A lot of times in college football, that is good enough. A winning record with convincing wins over your rival or rivals, like that is normally something that you can live with. That's normally something that you can live with, even if your team by and large underachieved, even if they fell short of whatever the expectations were overall. A winning season and beating your rivals is okay. But instead, we got Texas, and it's politicking, and it just won't allow me to have a good time in peace. I got to watch them beg for consideration to get into this raggedy ass college football playoff. So, and I say this raggedy ass college football playoff because I was a guy that never needed the playoff. Once I got it, I was happy to get it, but also never needed the expansion. Like I'm one of the few people that never really asked for any of this. Was fine with the BCS, the old way of doing it. Like I participated in the arguments, but I was never one calling for change, ever. So yeah, I'm calling the playoff raggedy to begin with, even as somebody that engages in it, that watches it, of course. Okay. But I'll digress on that. Before I give my objections to these arguments and my overall disdain for anyone outside of Sark himself attempting to make these arguments, I want to hear from Sark, because I don't blame him for doing his job in politicking. I think that's a part of the job. I think he's supposed to be out here politicking. But anybody beyond that, I'm not really here for it. And even within his argument, I got to admit, a lot of this shit is cringeworthy when you consider the season that the Longhorns actually had. So let's hear from Sark. All right. And I just want to start, but before I even start the video, And if you're listening on the audio only platforms, I appreciate that. I encourage you to come over to the YouTube page, B Block Podcast, or the B Block with Brandon Scott on YouTube is the podcast YouTube page. You can kind of interact a little bit more, and there's just a little bit more to the podcast. So I would encourage that. But before I even play this, these are the eyes. This is Steve Sarkisian after the game, after Texas beats Texas A&M. And these are the eyes of a man that is dying to be asked about Texas's playoff credentials, about whether he thinks that Texas has earned its spot in the college football playoffs. And if you got any question about what I'm saying, or if you think I'm doing a little bit too much here, I'm going to just let you listen to Steve Sarkisian answer this question himself, and we'll go through it.
You didn't want to talk about it on Monday. Do you think this team has done enough at 9-3 to get into the college football playoff?
I think we're absolutely a playoff team. I'm glad you asked, as I didn't want it to have to be part of my opening statement. There's a couple things in here that to me are really telling stats, okay? We're the first team since the 2019 national champion LSU team to beat 3 top 10 ranked teams in the same season during the regular season. So let's just chew on that for a second. There's been a lot of great football teams that have played over the last 6 years, but we're the first team since LSU to beat 3 top 10 ranked teams in the same season during the regular season.
Okay, let's stop right here for a second, because he is already, I gotta say, losing me. And I said that I'm good with him politicking. And I am good with him politicking. But this is cringe. My man, look, he's not the first person that I had heard by that point. And look, this is just by the time you get to the press conference. But I had already heard this, or seen, I had either heard this on the broadcast or seen this on the internet already, that they had this stat that was similar to, and teams that they beat that was similar to the 2019 LSU Tigers team. But what a load of shit. What a crock when all things are considered, man. Y'all comparing yourselves to the 2019 LSU Tigers in good faith. Y'all really doing that? Texas of all places, y'all really doing that? Really doing that in front of God and everybody. The nerve, Sark, the nerve of you guys. Look, it's an interesting stat, and I think it's one that's worth sharing and repeating and at least kind of batting around and thinking about. I don't have a problem with the stat itself. I cringe at the head coach of the football team using that as the first, interesting stat that he wants to pull out to make the case for this team that underachieved, objectively underachieved. I don't know, even in making this argument, if he could really say with a straight face, with his chest, that this team did not underachieve, considering that it was the number 1 ranked team going into the season and they lost 3 games and one of them was the Florida. Like all of this, I don't know how you could say that this team didn't underachieve, even if they did some good things, some really good, objectively good things. The LSU 2019 LSU team. Let's talk about that team for a quick second here before we hear more from Sark. Okay. And we know that this is a big part of the argument before we even get to, or it should have been a big part of the argument before we even got to the 2019 team. But a big part of the argument for Texas is the idea that they don't want to be punished for playing Ohio State. We'll hear that. We'll hear a little bit more of that in a second from Sark. How they don't want to be punished for that game against Ohio State, going on the road and being willing to play a tough opponent, a ranked opponent, top 10, top 5 opponent on the road, to be willing to do that. And like that shouldn't disqualify them. Then they want to compare themselves to the 2019 LSU team. Y'all remember that team? What they did before they actually won the championship. Y'all remember what they did early in the season? They started their season against Georgia Southern. They had one of those, what you would call cupcake games to start the season. But in their second game of the season, You know what LSU did? LSU, ranked number 6 at the time, went on the road to Darrell Royal and like they went on the road to Austin, to Texas, against a number 9 ranked Texas team, and they beat them by a touchdown. Beat them. They went on the road. Let's go through this again. LSU in 2019, at the time ranked number 6 in their second game of the season, went on the road to Austin, at Texas, ranked number 9 at the time. So there's 2 top 10 opponents. Went on the road and beat them. And so you don't have the space and the wiggle room to be comparing yourself to the 2019 LSU team. Like, I don't like that. Comparing yourself to the team that did everything that you had a chance to do and didn't. Everything you had a chance to do and didn't do. And you're going to compare yourself to them. Not to mention the fact, I know Sark wasn't there yet, but not to mention the fact that it's your program, that they actually made their case. That the thing that they actually did that you didn't, they did it against your program in 2019. Beat you on the road, beat your program on the road before you were there, but beat the Longhorns on the road, second week of the season, 2 top 10 opponents, handled business. You know what they didn't have to do at the end of the year? Cry about the fact they went on the road against a top 10 opponent and played them tough but lost, because they won the damn game. There's more from Sark. Y'all might see how some of this is irritating me. I've been irritated about it ever since the post game. And I told y'all, man, I would like to enjoy and celebrate the fact that, against my belief and better judgment of saying that they would do this, Texas actually went out there and beat both their rivals this year, Oklahoma and Texas A&M, to end the season. It is so cringe when someone has to make a loser argument to convince you that they're a winner. And that's what these are. These are valid points, but it's a loser argument to make. Let's hear more from Sark, man.
Okay. I think we have the number 5 ranked toughest schedule in the country. We've played the number 1, the number 3, and number 4 ranked teams in the country. Okay. We went on the road to Ohio State in week 1 and lost to them on a 1-score game. And we have the ball at the end of the game. We outgained them by nearly 200 yards, and no one else has been close to a 1-score game against them. But I think more importantly, it's the message that, what do we want to send to the head coaches and the athletic directors around the country? Do you want us not to schedule Ohio State? Because if we're a 10-2 team right now, this isn't a discussion. We're in the playoff. But we were willing to go up there and play that game. And so now when you play 5 top 10 ranked teams in the regular season and you go 3-2, you beat 3 of them, and you schedule an Ohio State out of conference play, I surely don't think we want to punish us to do that. Because what are we all going to do? We're all going to get out of those games, just like a lot of other teams in the country have done. And they've got nice, pretty records right now. But they weren't willing to go play these games out of conference. We're willing to go play those games. I just hope we don't get punished for doing that. And this whole idea that, hey, well, you lost to Florida. Well, the team that played for the national championship last year lost to Northern Illinois at home. So we're not going to you're going to punish us, and you don't want to punish them, but yet they were good enough to go play for a national title. So I have no doubt in my mind that the team we have in that locker room downstairs is a playoff football team and worthy of an opportunity to play for a national championship.
So much wrong with that. Like, yeah, like I said, cringe. when you have someone that has to make a loser argument to convince you that they're a winner. For example, should we have not scheduled Ohio State? Should we have not scheduled that game? No, because going back to your early reference to LSU, if you're as much like that team as you would like for that stat that you cited to indicate, if you're as much like the 2019 LSU team as you want to say you are, damn it, you would have gone on the road and beat Ohio State as the number 1 ranked team in the country at the time, going up against the number 3 ranked team in the country at the time. You talk about how you outgained them by however many yards you outgained them by. Then why didn't you win the damn game? Why didn't you win the game? Nobody else has played them that close. You didn't beat them either. It's all the same. It's all the same. You could argue that they were just barely kind of getting their groove against you. That maybe they were just playing with their food. Should we not have scheduled Ohio State? Not if you were going to lose the game, and especially not if you were just going to go and lose to Florida anyway. Man, the sin is not simply scheduling Ohio State or merely losing to Ohio State. It's not understanding, to me, the sin is not understanding the weight of each game after that. To me, I feel like it's offensive to me, like if you want the benefit of the doubt for scheduling and playing the game, but you don't want to accept the accountability of losing the game and then losing it and having more blemishes throughout the season. I feel like the clear implication of playing that game, of Texas playing that game on the road against Ohio State, is that you either win it or the rest of your season needs to be unassailable. To me, that's the clear implication of the game. I feel like you know that going in, especially if you're Sark, you're not new. You didn't just come around. You know that this is how it works. That is the clear implication of the game. You lose that game, and the rest of the season is on you to leave no doubt about the kind of football team that you are. Texas did not do that. Texas beat its rivals, and it's got a couple of more impressive wins, like Sark is saying. But after losing that first game, Texas did not clearly declare itself as one of the best teams in the country. And I think that by the end of it, they can feel pretty good about saying that. But throughout the season, they left too many doubts. Starting with a loss on the road against a worthy opponent, an opponent that otherwise there would be no shame in losing to. But then you lose to a Florida team that fired its coach during the season. What are we doing? What are we doing? All season, man. And this is just falling flat for me because all season Texas has been a maybe. Maybe they'll show up, maybe they won't. Maybe they're really good, maybe they're not. Maybe they'll win against Oklahoma, maybe they'll lose to Florida, or whatever. Like now, to me, this is the consequence of being a clearly talented but inconsistent team. And that consequence is maybe you don't get in the college football playoff. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I think we should be fair to Texas and like think about these things. The committee should consider all of these things, but it's not really anyone else's job, I think, to care about Texas's sob story here as much as I root for them. To me, like when they voluntarily made their season tougher than it needed to be, and then they basically failed to take care of business against the teams that they're supposed to take care of business against. Like you go from the top ranked team in the country to begging for playoff consideration. That to me is pathetic. That is pathetic. It's a talented team. it's a team that has a case to be one of the best in the country, and I think would be an interesting and competitive team in the college football playoff if they were to make it. But it's always been that. It was that from the very beginning. I thought that in college football, your fate is supposed to be earned. Good and or bad. Good, bad, and indifferent. So I think you can isolate each one of Texas's losses and make your justification for why this one in a vacuum is excusable. Oh, you're on the road against Ohio State, to start the season. That's a tough game. Not everybody's got the balls to even schedule that game. Well, the 2019 LSU team that you want to compare yourself to went out there to your place and won that game. Oh, Florida. We lost to Florida, but Notre Dame lost to a team they wasn't supposed to lose to too. Really? That's what we're doing. We're using Notre Dame. Like to me, if anything, it's more of a case against Notre Dame than it is. Like I view that as more of a knock on Notre Dame as I do that supporting my case. Like the team that you don't want, no disrespect to Notre Dame and my fighting Irish out there. But when I'm trying to make the case for why I should be in the playoff, I don't want to compare myself to y'all. Because y'all definitely earn, not Notre Dame. Notre Dame, I feel like makes its case and earns its spot in the playoffs, but also always earns its spot out of it once they get knocked out. The ultimate banana in the tailpipe. Oh, well, Notre Dame did it. Like I'll give Notre Dame this much credit. They don't feel like losing the cupcakes is acceptable. They don't feel like losing the cupcakes is like, hey, because we did this, you too should lose to a team that you're not supposed to lose to and make it to the championship. Nah, they're like, let's just kind of bear down and let's put our head down and go to work and win the rest of our games. Oh, which by the way, Notre Dame won the rest of their games. They won all their other games. Perhaps the weakest argument of them all. I thought my guy Landry, who is also a Texas fan, made a pretty good point that, and he's pretty good about being objective as much as he loves Texas, and his connection to Texas is even greater than mine. As also technically a T-shirt, as you might say, fan. And I know he doesn't view himself that way. He's got family ties there. I think he was born there. He says Texas doesn't deserve to be in the college football playoff. You can't lose to Florida like that and have 3 L's. Also, Texas A&M is a good college football playoff worthy team, but not some powerhouse that completely makes your resume and overrides your previous failures. Well said, man. You cannot be like, hey, well, now that we beat the Texas A&M team that we were really always supposed to beat from the very beginning, that'll show them. Nah, man, we don't watch that and then unsee. Even though I didn't think you'd win, I didn't think you'd win the game because you were the inconsistent outfit that you were throughout the season. Because I wasn't just convinced by the Arkansas win the previous week. Like I watch you throughout the season, I'm like, man, they don't show up for big games, or at least you can't necessarily trust them to. I just watched what they did against Georgia. I didn't think Georgia was that much better than Texas A&M, and the record would have said that they weren't. So, like, I've watched you throughout the season. I've watched it. It's just tough. It's tough, man. I don't. I can't get with it. What I can get with though is this hilarious back and forth between Lane Kiffin and this reporter that I'd never heard of from Ole Miss. And let's get this guy's name correct just for the sake of us discussing it. Looks like his name is Ben Garrett, and he works at a place called the Ole Miss Spirit. They cover Ole Miss sports for that On3 network. So if you're familiar with On3 Sports, he is with them. Apparently does some rival stuff and clearly has a podcast like like I have one here and like everyone basically has that. Certainly that's in media, right? And so he's one of the Ole Miss beat guys, I guess. And look, I got a disclaimer here, man. I do not follow or care about the Ole Miss beat. Okay. I don't. Even with this Texas stuff, my timeline, in spite of that, has been full of Lane Kiffin stuff. Like I said earlier, by the time this is out here, Kiffin's decision is probably going to be made. People are going to be reacting to that. I do not care all that much about where he ends up. I do think it's going to be LSU. I should just say that for the record. If it hasn't already been put out there, let me just check now since I'm talking about it. Let's see. Anybody with anything on Kiffin? No, as of the moment. So, look, I think it should be LSU, and that's probably the correct move by him. I'm not too caught up with it. What I am caught up is this hilarious exchange between Kiffin and the beat reporter. What is it again? Ben, where do we go? Ben Garrett. Was not expecting it to go this way, but let's for context, if you did not see this, let's play it here. And y'all got to get with me for a second because I'm still getting used to learning the screen share element to all of this. But basically, Ben uses a really, I thought, funny analogy for Lane Kiffin, and Lane Kiffin did not per se appreciate it. Let's just say that that's safe to say. And this is what that exchange looked like on Friday.
Oh. So you want to walk in here and call me a hoe? We'll see how it goes.
You said you're going to defend that? You're going to walk in here and call me a hoe, and we'll see how that goes. Okay. And so what is he talking about? Why is he mad at this reporter for calling him a hoe? And what kind of reporter calls a guy that he's covering a hoe? What is this about? And so this was posted for context on the guy's podcast of how it is that a reporter ended up calling Lane Kiffin a hoe and what he was talking about. And I'll let y'all decide. Do y'all think that Lane Kiffin is actually being called a hoe here? Or is this just a perhaps inappropriate, clunky analogy, maybe a too emotional way of talking about your subject matter? Y'all decide what y'all think this is from old Ben Garrett.
Or at least decent enough to say, man, this place has been awesome to me. But did you see that? Like, you have to qualify with, but did you see the Citadel last week? Like, dude, it's done. People are done with the trolling. It's old. This whole situation reminds me of a Project Pat line. Do you know what that Project Pat line was? Do you even know who Project Pat is?
I know who it is. I don't know what the line is.
Project Pata from 3-6 Mafia, right up in the road from here in New Albany, in Memphis, Tennessee. He said, you can't turn a hoe into a housewife. Hoes don't act right. And I I feel it's appropriate because I mean, tell me it's wrong. Like, dude, it is what it is. Kate Turner, I went to a housewife. Like, that's what's happened here.
We're
Like,
gonna end this on a 666 Mafia quote.
3-6, not 666. You're so white, but you get what I'm saying. Like, dude, you knew what you were signing up for.
I don't think he does get what you're saying. I don't think he does. 666.
All Ole Miss fans would say it doesn't have to end messy, and you made it messy anyway, right? I don't know how you draw any other conclusion other than Lane Kiffin is leaving.
I think that's all the guy was trying to say. That's probably all he needed to say. This was funny to me, man. I gotta say, of course, did not have that great of a problem with this because, well, I'm not directly connected to this. He's not talking about me. I'm not on this beat. I get to kind of observe this just like anybody else. And I actually appreciated the reference. Like, I thought it was, if I was a listener, put it to you this way. If I was somebody that cared about Ole Miss football and just happened to listen to this guy's podcast as somebody who is plugged in or has some particular insight on Ole Miss, sort of similar to how I hope the audience to this podcast would feel about me. If I was one of those on this guy's podcast, toward this guy's podcast, I would have laughed and found this reference both funny and harmless. I wouldn't have viewed it as he's actually calling, and he kind of is, but I don't feel like he's really calling Lane Kiffin a hoe in the sense of kind of the way we think about hoes, and certainly not the way the Project Pat thinks about hoes. I think he's just making an analogy, clearly saying that this guy is not committed to Ole Miss. He's just looking for his next big score. And I don't know how you could really argue with that. I don't know if I don't think it's necessarily fair to compare that to being a hoe as much as that is to, in this case, being a capitalist and an opportunist and just someone that's looking to better their career. You know, if somebody comes and offers old Ben here, a better version of this of what he does, like if somebody offers him, if Feinbaum goes fully into politics and they say, "Hey Ben, we love the work that you've been doing at Ole Miss, but we want you to come and take over Feinbaum's show and do come work at the SEC network, or come be our SEC guy, or come be our national college football guy because of the work that we've seen you do at Ole Miss." Like, is he a hoe for not staying at On 3? Is he a hoe for entertaining that? I don't think so. But I get the reference. I appreciate that. I'm not familiar with this guy, so I don't really know his personality and nothing like that. So I would not have been expecting that. I would have expected him to be more like his co-host, who clearly did not. Like he said, I know who Project Pat is. I know who Project Pat is, but I don't know the line. 666 Mafia. It's like that. I would have expected them to both be that way, and I was pleasantly surprised that they were not. That one of them had a 3-6 Mafia reference for this Lane Kiffin situation. I appreciated that. I also, though, understand why Lane Kiffin, in his position, would not appreciate it. If I'm being honest, I'm a little disappointed that he doesn't have necessarily the sense of humor to understand where this guy is coming from. But that's probably because he is talking directly about him and kind of calling him a hoe. If not directly a hoe, basically saying, like, even the guy later tried to say, "I didn't say you were a hoe. I tried to say your behavior. This was hoe behavior." Well, I don't really like that either. I wouldn't really like that either, I guess. But the reference itself I thought was funny. You just got to be careful about the things that you say into a microphone. Because look, I don't want to be a hypocrite here. It's easy for me to laugh at that. It's easy for me to look at that from a bird's eye view and say, "Oh, it's cool. He called that man a hoe." But because I don't have nothing to do with it. But I can tell you, just to be straight up, I wouldn't have made that reference about any of the coaches that I cover. If Willie Fritz or D'Amico Ryans or M.A. Udoka or Joe Espada or Steve Sarkisian. I don't cover Steve. I don't cover Sark or Mike Elko. But any of these guys that I could potentially be in the same room with, I don't think, and especially if I'm in the same room with them often, right? The best case here, or the best example here, would be D'Amico Ryans probably, or M.A. Udoka. I'm not saying nothing like that. I'm not saying nothing like that without knowing for a fact that I got the kind of relationship or the kind of back and forth banter, or that I have an understanding of that person's sense of humor, that if I saw them in person, knowing that they had seen that, or if that person confronted me about what I had said, that I could either defend it or that me and that person could laugh about it. Like I'd have to know that. I'd have to feel comfortable about that before I was willing to say that. And he clearly does not have that relationship with Lane. And he clearly felt comfortable trying this. And I think felt that way because of his personal connection to the program, like whatever personal affinity he has for the program. And again, I don't know this guy, but this is a classic case of being careful of what you say in the microphone about people that you got to see in person. Don't say on the mic what you either wouldn't say in person, or at the very least be willing to defend, and defend it well. Not just, well, I didn't say you was a hoe. I was just saying you was acting like a hoe. Yeah, but kind of the same thing, and I don't really like it or appreciate it. And you ain't finna just be calling me no hoe like that, and then gonna come stand in my face, or come stand next to me, and we not talk about it. We not mention it. Even if we laugh about it at some point, and I don't know if they would, but you're gonna hear about this. Call me no hoe out here, or use Project Pat references on me, however funny they might be. I don't know. I thought it was funny. I thought it was funny, even if ill-advised and not something that somebody should actually say. Okay, last thing here before we get out. CJ Stroud officially clears concussion protocol, gonna play against the Colts. Feel like we've already kind of gone over a lot of this, but it was not officially official at the time. It is officially official now. We have heard from CJ Stroud. We have all the confirmation that we need. This guy is gonna play on Sunday. And I would just say that my expectation of him is sort of, I feel like people have been accused of babying CJ Stroud in the media over time, and I'm not attempting to do that. I'm just trying to be considerate of the fact that the guy has not played in 3 weeks and dealt with a concussion that kept him out for those 3 weeks. And so I'm trying to temper the expectation of exactly how good I expect him to be. That being said, I do like the matchups. Like, I think it's a fascinating matchup with CJ Stroud and the outside receivers that the Texans have, both the established one and the rookie that's developing. The established one being Nico Collins, the developing rookie being Jaden Higgins, going up against this set of corners. Excuse me, going up against this set of corners in Sauce Gardner and Tre'Davious Ward. So you got big physical corners going up against big physical wide receivers, and a quarterback that is more so known for his accuracy, I think, early in his career, but still, I think, pretty damn accurate and can deliver the football and can take advantage of these one-on-one matchups. I'm expecting them to do that. I think the big thing that is key for me, and I mentioned this on the drive with Clint Sterner on Friday when we were at BB's in Pearland, I think the big thing is the infrastructure around CJ Stroud and the support system really showing up to help him in this game. And ideally, he doesn't need the help. Ideally, he's just ready to go out there and ball out and be CJ Stroud, that everybody knows and loves and remembers, and this isn't an issue. But I think just unique to this game and unique to this team that they've put together this year, they've got a defense that we've talked about has potential to be historic. Certainly, for my money, the best defense in the league, the best defense that I've seen this season, okay? And one of the better defenses that we've probably seen in a long time. So you've got that. And what that allows you to do is stay in pretty much any game. You've got a defense that can keep you in pretty much any game, which is a luxury that most teams cannot say that they have. And then on top of that, you have this stated identity or desired identity to be a run first football team or a smash mouth football team, a physical team up front that runs the football. You have not proven yourself to be exactly that, but you have been closer to that more recently than you were, let's say, when you first got this thing cracking. And especially with the new offensive line combination that you got, and this understanding now that your rookie running back is probably your top back, and your veteran and Nick Chubb is a perfectly suitable second back, which is probably what you were hoping he'd be anyway behind Joe Mixon. Like between Woody Marks and Nick Chubb, you've got to find 1-2 punch at running back. This offensive line, this new offensive line combination that you've got is one that I think opens up some opportunities for you. And then against this Indianapolis front, they're not great against the run. I think they're vulnerable against the run, and they've looked better against the run, or their numbers are better because for so much of the games that they've played, especially the games that they won, they've played from ahead. Their offense was really doing a lot of the work for them. The offense, their actual offense, was doing a lot of work for their run defense because they get up to such a tremendous lead that running the ball was not really a viable strategy for the opponent. But most opponents don't have a defense like the Texans that can handle business against the Colts offense, hold them sort of at bay, while you, when you have the ball, have an opportunity to kind of really have methodical drives and do all of the shit that people hate about this offense, the dink and dunk and the wanting to run it up the middle and it looking really old school and primitive and all of that. Look, I get the criticism of this offense, but I think that you are now more so built to do it, and this is a team to do it against, this Colts team. So I say all of that just to say that I hope that they are intentional about running the football and successful at it, because I think that opens things up for C.J. Stroud. It kind of goes without saying that the run opens things up for the pass, but I think it's especially important in this matchup. Especially important with your quarterback having not played in the last 3 weeks. And so that is my expectation. That is also my concern, I guess you could say, is that, hey, if they don't do that, I hope they don't just throw CJ Stroud out there and just say, hey, man, go carry us, go win the game. I'm very much looking forward to, for the Texans' sake, what I would say is a balanced approach to this game with CJ Stroud, despite the fact that they got their starting quarterback out there, which I think is huge. I think it's an incredible thing now, knowing that they have an opportunity to walk down the Colts. They can walk down the Chiefs. Like, the season is in front of them, but I do want to see them continue to lean into the whole balanced approach, given where the quarterback is, and given who the opponent is this weekend. So that's where I'm at. Another podcast that was probably way long. I was like, man, I'm gonna get on there and talk about 15, 20 minutes and get on out of there. But I know better, right? Like, I know better. Any given episode. So if you make it this far, man, look, I really appreciate it. I want you to subscribe to the YouTube page, subscribe to the podcast wherever it is that you get your podcast. Also, leave comments, rate, review, tell other people about the podcast as well. And look, until next time, man, y'all be good.